Hello, adventurers of all shapes and sizes. My name is Chance. Welcome to my guide, and thank you so much for essentially tuning into the last major step in the character creation series. We finally made it. Step 10. Woo woo. So we're just gonna be looking at finishing details. A lot of these don't really have too much to do with mechanics, at least for the vast majority of classes, although they're just worth going over just so we can say we've talked about them and fleshed them out. That being said, let's take a look at the first subject of inquiry, that being alignment. Your character's alignment is an indicator of their morality and personality. If your alignment has any components other than neutral, your character gains the benefit of those alignment components. This might affect the way various spells, items, and creatures interact with your character. So alignment is a really weird subject in the way that almost every game master and player have their own definition of how to quantify these various alignments. The way I look at it is when you're talking about good and evil, good characters will typically sacrifice their own personal interest and gain to help out others, and evil people will harm others to further their own ambitions. And for the most part, that matches up. In that case, true neutrality would be really just pacifists. Like, they won't actively be the first one to throw a punch. They'll really only react to various things. They're not particularly ambitious in one way or the other. And then when you're talking about lawful versus chaotic, it's how much of a plan you have. So, for example, if you are a good person and you plan things out meticulously and it's very organized and structured, you would be lawful good. However, if you just like helping people sporadically and spontaneous, I'd say you're chaotic good. That's really just how I look at it. And then neutral would be when you operate within a moral premise. However, it's very loosely defined. So Buddhism, for example, once again, kind of falling in line with that pacifist mentality. Ultimately, a lot of game masters and a lot of players are going to have different definitions, so feel free to put them down beneath in the comment section. I'm always really curious to discuss that kind of stuff with you guys anyways. The next thing we're going to take a look at is deities. So write down a deity your character worships. If any, champions and clerics must worship a deity. For those particular classes, there's mechanical benefits based on the deity they choose. Pathfinder 2e has a ton of deities to look over, and they're all really interesting. I really do like them. For the vast majority of classes, though, just take it as flavor, I suppose. Let's move on. The next thing we're taking a look at here is age. Now, there aren't any mechanical adjustments to your character for being particularly old, but you might want to take into account when considering your starting ability scores and future advancement. Just take it as flavor. Different ancestries live for different lengths of time, sometimes hundreds upon hundreds of years, so just make sure it's relative to the ancestry. That being said, though, I don't know. The book makes an argument that if you're older, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to change in your ways, and maybe there's some truth to that, maybe there's not, but as long as the role plays good, I don't see a problem with the character being any age in particular. Now let's move on. So the next thing the book addresses is gender and pronouns. Characters of all genders are equally likely to become adventurers, which is fine and cool. It might be worth noting that I feel like the way a lot of people are going to use this as to like put their class. For example, different class structures would have different pronouns assigned to various tiers, right? So like lords, barons, sir, knight, things of that nature. So that's probably a fair use for any as that particular spot. But if you want to make it a more kind of gendered thing, I suppose you can. I'd run it past the game master and maybe the table at large during the session 0, but I don't see anything particularly wrong with that. Now let's move on to class DC. A class's DC sets the difficulty for certain abilities granted to your character class. We've gone over these a little bit when we've actually talked about class, but the DC is 10 plus your proficiency modifier plus the ability modifier, and the ability you use is your key ability. It's at the beginning of every class. Once again, we kind of already went over it, but there it is, just a little bit more laid out. The next thing we're going to talk about is hero points. I really love these. I think Paizo did a really good job. This is honestly how I've been using inspiration in all of my 5e games anyways, so it's nice to see it being a more official mechanic. So your hero usually begins each game session with 1 hero point, and you can gain additional hero points during the session by performing heroic deeds or devising clever strategies. Your character can use hero points to gain certain benefits, such as staving off death or re-rolling a d20. I really do love them. Cool concept. Pro tip for some game masters out there, I would heavily experiment with the idea of treating these more like a celestial currency. For example, if the character is facing an adversary that they have no chance of defeating on their own, they can spend a cumulative number of hero points in a way to try and persuade a greater deity or greater power to help them out. I think that'd be kind of cool, but that's just my opinion. If you have any other ideas for them, put it down beneath in the comment section. But let's move on. Now let's take a look at armor class. Your character's armor class represents how difficult they are to hit in combat. Higher the armor class, harder it is to hit them. To calculate it, it's 10 plus your dexterity modifier up to a cap set by your armor, plus proficiency, plus any other modifiers. Pretty easy to understand. When a creature rolls to attack, they roll a d20, and then that's the number they compare to your AC to see whether or not they hit. It's pretty simple stuff, but it's definitely worth addressing. And then the next thing we're going to take a look at is bulk, which is really just carrying capacity. So bulk determines how much weight they can comfortably carry. If they're carrying a total amount of bulk that exceeds 5 plus their strength modifier, they're encumbered. A creature can't carry a total amount of bulk that exceeds 10 plus their strength modifier. 10 light items make up 1 bulk. This is something we're going to be doing a real deep dive in the equipment section, so I'm not really going to dwell on it too much here, but ideally you want to be carrying less than 5 plus your strength modifier. That's ideal for speed and for a couple other mechanics, but if you have to carry more, you can, and just be prepared to accept the consequences for it. That being said, that's really all you have to consider in terms of things we haven't covered already. It's pretty good. So congratulations on creating your first Pathfinder 2e character. I really hope this guide was able to help you out, so drop in a like and subscribe, and let me know down beneath what kind of character you ended up with. I'm always really curious. So with that being said, thank you so much. It might be worth noting though, we do have one extra video coming out in relation to character creation. It's just about leveling, so keep an eye out for that. But outside of that, we're about done. I'm super excited to start diving into the ancestries. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, drop a like and subscribe if I've been able to help you out at all. And with that being said, I hope you have a great day, and as always, happy adventuring.